Stardate 1312.4. The impossible has happened. From directly ahead, we're picking up a recorded distress signal. The call letters of a vessel which has been missing for over 2 centuries. Did another Earth ship once probe out of the galaxy as we intend to do? What happened to it out there? Is this some warning they've left behind?
Greetings from my cellar. I know some of you have been pounded with snow. Here where I live, we had a whitewash a couple of mornings. It was gone by the afternoon. But some of you up north, just in Ohio, have been pounded. You have my sympathy and best wishes for digging out. And our fooling around with the entry last week, the intro was pretty well received, judging from the comments I got. And by now you've seen, and we've got a couple of others up our sleeve. So, yeah, Jim's having a good time with it, and I'm loving it, so perfect. Synergy. Very fun opening there. I remember both the Who episode and the D&D commercial fondly. Great intro. Well done. My favorite Doctor Who. Thank you. Glad you enjoyed it. It makes it more fun. Libraries are a great way to find new players. 4 years ago, I walked up to a table at the library. They introduced me to D&D, and I've been playing role games ever since. Couldn't agree more. We have a brand new branch, and it's magnificent and huge areas. And after the first of the year, I've been speaking with a couple of the librarians there, and we're going to attempt to get some role-playing going, some D&D, just some easy-peasy beginner stuff. And I hope we can build something up and identify some DMs and let them take over and step back. But in the meantime, we're just talking about what we want to do, and we'll figure out how in the upcoming weeks. But yes, libraries are a great place. You can go into a different library and go, hey, you got any gamers that play in here? And you'd be surprised how many would go, oh yeah, on Wednesday afternoons or Friday morning, whenever the time is. I'd be interested in hearing you expand on your feelings or thoughts regarding how much tolerance there would be between members of a party with different alignments. Well, you bring a lot of questions into that. First off, are the players all good friends who've been playing together for a while and are just having a good time? Are the players just people who know each other, some of them better than others? These are going to affect how they interact with each other on alignments. My prediction would be that the group that's been playing together and just having a good time and not really paying too much mind to the strictest letters of the information printed in the rule books, because they were always only meant to be guidelines, they wouldn't probably have a problem with it, as long as the alignments weren't causing them to work at odds. And to do that, you would have to do that, DM. You would have to give agendas to the other players, to each group by alignment, and you could make the mess of your lifetime. Now, if you have a group that they can rotate in and out, miss a week, but it's all good. If you're structured that way, and you have a couple rules lawyers, then you might see something going on. If there's some unpleasant rivalry at the table, you might see that brought into play. I used to, in my days of wickedness and TPKs, I used to put alignments on all the pregens I handed out. And I just enjoyed the carnage. Because most of the time, the people in a convention group, in a convention party, most of them don't know each other. And so, as the saying goes, knives out. Alignments can get in the way, and it depends on what part of the alignment are you talking about. Are you talking about lawful chaotic? Are you talking about good and evil? Good and evil would have probably, I would think, more problems within a group than chaotic lawful. That dichotomy, I think that would have more of a be more of a sore spot under the saddle. I think. Somebody followed up with, alignments are pretty hard to keep track of if you have lots of players. It either requires lots of bookkeeping or lots of role-playing by the DM to flesh out the moral conflict in question. Exactly. How much mud do you want on your hands, DMs? How much mud? Because you're going to have to shape it, or clay. You're going to have to shape it and build it and run it and keep track of it. And there are occasions, there are times, and there's a comment later that I'll address this in, where alignment can have become a factor in a decision or a situation. But between the players, it's just, kind of like between a bunch of friends that all play softball together. You get together, you play softball, you have a good time, you share some beers, you play the game, and you all go home to whatever it is you do. It's the same way. You get together, you play some D&D, you have some beers or soft drinks or whatever you care to imbibe with, and you go home and you do your thing, your own thing. There's a parallel there, I believe. And the more players you have, the harder it is. And if you get fractious players in the group that decide to be just fractious, they can use alignment rubbing up against each other as justification for starting some shit. Always try to think through anything you decide you want to put into your existing game or your beginning game. Try to think that through. What kind of crap is that going to make me? How many hoops am I going to have to jump through because of this? You can always add in more stuff afterwards once you get your player group gets a little more sophisticated and polished. Religious considerations or political considerations can be deep background, very deep background, that it's there. There's a government that collects taxes and that, but hey, you're wandering dudes, just not going from job to job, etc., not being pinned down. You're aware it's there, but it doesn't affect you. Next. My mom was a whack, and thank you for bringing up and clarifying the whole generational thing. Finally, someone who was there instead of experts who were not even born when D&D was released. Now, as far as alignment for me, alignment and clerics make no sense. I instead use faith, and it is unique classes who use religion in their class structures. Sweet. Only get involved in it to the extent you need to. No need to set up a whole overarching what if. You know, one time I was writing an adventure for a Gary Con, and there were giant, oversized polar bears. And if they got, and they were all walking around on their hind legs. And I decided that if one of these bears got you in a hug, it was over probably. So I made up a chart on what would happen when they grabbed you, how many dice of damage they could do, you know, the range, etc., etc. And then as it happened in the game, one of the players went out to do it to the bear instead, and so I just reversed everything. Well, you got to have enough things you can reverse if you're going to add stuff in. I could have used the polar bears just straight dice off the tables, armor class, etc. Or I could use the he's gotcha, roll 3d6 and see how bad it is or whatever, and then have a chart on. You know, if you put something in, you better be able to run it the other direction. It's got to work both. It's got to work more than one way, or you're going to find out that when you wanted to go the other way some point in the future, whatever the way it is, you're going to run into a wall that you put yourself behind. I found alignment useful when dealing with items, and this I like. This is the one I refer to as later. When dealing with items may be imbued with good or evil and character interactions with them. What about areas, temples, and the such that have extra auras of good or evil? Don't you also need alignment so that using detect protection from good or evil spells work? Well, pardon me. Yes, I like the idea of aligned items and not being usable in the other alignments, or inflicting a zap when you try to pick it up or wield it or whatever. But again, DMs, it's you that would put something into the game that would require that or react to that or whatever. So think about something like that before you stick it in there. Think about it. If you're going to give an item an alignment, now if you haven't been getting into alignments and following them carefully and staying in good graces or whatever, good juju, good karma, if you hadn't up to this point, all of a sudden you've got to make a bunch of arbitrary decisions. So will it work? Well, it won't. Well, you've been bad. You haven't been following your alignment very well lately, so no, it won't work for you. You can disguise that by, well, you go up, you pick it up, and you try to whatever. Doesn't seem to respond. Nothing happens. Somebody else can do it, and bingo. How'd that happen? Well, that requires information gathering. Now, as far as detecting, I don't know that I necessarily have to have an aligned detection spell. That's kind of like metaphysical radar. And I don't believe something that basic needs to be aligned. Protection, yeah, in most cases, I probably allow it. I'm not going to say which of the pantheon is, granting you this or whatever. However, if I had somebody who had been doing some evil shit and they tried to do something that involved protection from evil, it wouldn't work because they would protect from themselves. And boy, could you have fun with that. Think about that. All right, what was it? Great Open. Mr. Baker is my favorite Doctor Who. He played a great evil wizard in a Sinbad movie. Oh, I didn't know that. I'll have to look for that. All right, my favorite Doctor. Chivalry and Sorcery is an okay game for what it is. I find that when a campaign is constructed like that, it tends more often than not to go sideways. I would say play that more if you're playing with people who you game with often, but to each his own. I should have been more clear regarding Chivalry and Sorcery. I never actually tried to use the system to run a game campaign. Back in the Dark Ages, I'd buy and read every RPG system that came out. Tunnels and Trolls, the various offerings from Iron Crown, Spell Law, Middle-earth, RP, etc. Heck, even SPI tried their hand at RPG. I just mined the various systems for interesting concepts and mechanics to use in my D&D campaign. And that's great. The rules, the books always said these are suggestions, not hard and fast rules. These are ideas, not chiseled in stone. And if you find somebody else's magic system or some other combat system or whatever, try it out. But be advised and be cautious, because it's likely it should have been developed, that combat system should have been developed within the parameters of that game. How that game's parameters and your D&D game mesh could be problematic. But yeah, I know people that have just about everything ever published about RPGs. That's their collections. All right, more time topic on alignment. I love the comment that alignment in D&D is for the DM and player to play out, not the other players with each other. There are too many times that player-to-player alignment grievance is just happening as a proxy for real-life player squawkles. That's a very, very good point. Two of you in the group aren't getting on for whatever reason. That's too easy an edge to give them. Or, put it this way, too dangerous a weapon for you to defend against, DM. In our old group, who all got along great together, it was never an issue. The thieves didn't steal from other players in the group, and the paladin knew to excuse himself from the room when the chaotic players wanted to have a word with captured goblins who had surrendered. Well, that's what friends do. That's what makes the world go round, tolerance. All right, many thanks for sharing your experiences and insights about the elephant in the room. Gary. I'm with you when it comes to context is everything, and within the context you present, your assessments ring true. I also don't think it's fair to target Gary or Dave and blame them for devaluation of others when they tried to avoid it, as far as their knowledge about it allowed to. Meanwhile, devaluation of the other runs deep culturally in the West, but elsewhere there's no shortage either. I guess we should take a closer look at foundational beliefs and mechanisms today. Wow, excuse me, getting dry. Tongue's hanging up. Yeehaw, Mountain Dew. We should take a closer look at foundational beliefs and mechanisms today, without finger-pointing at people who tried to escape them as much as they could in their time. I mean, it's not Gary's fault that even fairy tales are spoiled in their own right. Wait. When we were doing this, feminism was something being only beginning to be noticed in the mainstream, particularly in the Midwest, where we were a year or two behind everybody, except Chicago. But we were. Music, movies, whatever, we're a year behind. The text, homophobia is transphobia, is sexism, is misogyny, is a quite good example about what flows out of gender/sex essentialism and conventional gender roles. If that would be the context, the statement, Gary was a misogynist, would make some sense. Standing alone, without that context, the statement wouldn't make any sense. It would lead readers astray. Yeah, the cultural mores and fears and standards were so different. And we're all a product over time. I'm an old hippie from the summer of love. But foundationally, values-wise, that's me. The text in newer D&D books, like in The Making of Original Dungeons & Dragons 70 to 77, are just bad texts with too little societal background and too much finger-pointing. White knightery. That doesn't help anyone and just grows resentments. With Musk himself, the case is clear. He does promote misogyny, and he can't cope with having a trans daughter. Till now, it's quite clear that being trans has at least some biological roots. Well, I don't know, I pay as little attention to Musk as I can. I was sad to read the awful take from the foreword of The Making of Original D&D. I'll trust your account of Gary's character over any clowns from WotC or Twitter. I've heard it is an otherwise great book covering the early days of the game. John Peterson also wrote The Elusive Shift about kind of the same subject. Would you recommend either of these titles? Well, I would certainly... John's Elusive Shift is an interesting analysis of the morphing and evolution. The Making of the Original I haven't even seen. Nobody sent me a copy of it to read, so have no opinion. So I can't say yes or no on the one. Library and school clubs. School clubs are always looking for help too. Make your own groups and make new role players. Well, that's great advice for high schoolers that might be watching this. But just try to go up to a school that doesn't already know you for some period of time and say, "Hi, I want to start a game with a bunch of games with your students." Now, I might be able to do it because I have been fingerprinted as a teacher. I don't know who I would have to approach to do it. I could do it. Or I could make my services available. If there's any students that want to set one up, I could have an after-school hour to tell them how to do it or something like that. The library, however, is a different thing. I have much more in play at the library. So, yeah, high schools are good, but you got to be a high schooler to do it, or you're going to know somebody up there, and you got to be vetted. I mean, let's face it, they don't want some serious creep access to their students. I know I wouldn't. I wouldn't when I taught. I wouldn't have. When I was a teacher, I wouldn't have wanted somebody else to be able to do that. So I understand that. Now, this is a long comment, but I'm going to read it. Well, I hope. Well, not too many stumbles. This problem is tribalism and reactionaries. People are making up things that WotC never actually said to get all offended and attack people like Tandro and refusing to even acknowledge the problematic things that there were. I'll stop here. A comment that I chose not to address in its entirety, asked me, what did I think that Tandro had basically said, ignore me and all others of the old school. Well, I didn't know he had, and I don't know who Tandro is, and I don't really give a shit about anything WotC says to me or about me, unless it's a lie. And then people acting like misogyny and sexism are the same thing, and throwing out accusations of misogyny when they mean sexism doesn't help. If I said 16 Candles has racist and sexist scene, that doesn't mean I'm saying John Hughes is a racist and a sexist, or that those who enjoyed the film back then are racist or sexist, or that I'm shitting on your childhoods. I'm just calling out a fact. And yet, that's what a lot of gamers are saying about that forward. People need to chill and stop making things up to justify their offense. Which is ironic, because the people who are getting their underwear in knots the most are the same ones complaining about how everyone gets so easily offended nowadays. What he said. Or she. I don't know. Okay, let's address that now. Supposedly, see, I don't follow all this crap. I find it boring, confusing. Supposedly, one of the problems with the hobby is too many people following the old guard, or I'm not exactly sure. All right. Maybe the problem that people are going back to older editions is because they're more fun. I don't know. Could be. Could be they're more fun to play. Could be they're easier to play. I don't know. They're a different way to play, certainly. As to whether or not he said something about I should be ignored, or my group, and let's face it, there's only about a dozen of us. I don't care. I've never cared what WotC had to say one way or another. I have nothing to do with them. D&D is the game. WotC is the brand. The game is not the brand. The brand is the game, because what else do they have? I don't care. Doesn't affect the way I play one iota. If they want to call names, I don't care. If they want to make excuses on why things aren't happening the way somebody predicted they would or should or could, I don't care. I've never cared. They have nothing to do with me and what I do. So, it's a big meh. And on that uplifting note, I'll say, Dodata Govi. Hello, and welcome to my cellar.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs. Still quite a feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. last man around when them rates went down. Called it Gary in that Lake Geneva town. Hey Gary, it's an awful mess. Let me edit, we'll have success. D&D and Dragon Magazine. He's a curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Magic missile, it's a mortar shell. Make it hit in the first level spell. Brought psionics to the game to attack that wizard's brain. ESR and fantasy, collection of micro armory. Titan with tramp under a tree, high as could be. He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.